here is the short story of where we are in retail real estate in the US today. So, number one, vacancy rates are super low. Overall in the US, vacancy is only 4.1%. Folks, that is the lowest I've ever seen it in my career. It may be the lowest that it's ever been all time. Number two, there have been some store closures, but overall, retailers are opening more stores than they're closing. So low vacancy, demand. Number three, developers aren't building significant amounts of new retail real estate, especially shopping centers. For a variety of economic reasons right now, like the retail real estate we have is pretty much what we're going to have, at least for the foreseeable future. And all of that means, number four, competition for retail space is tougher than ever. So when a retailer does actually get and acquire a space, they need to make that real estate as worthwhile as possible. It has to be compelling to the consumer. And that is what we are talking about today. We're going to talk about a couple of retailers that are expanding right now. Plus, we're going to go through some examples of notable retail site visits made by my guest and me. So get ready for Store Talk, which I just made up, with my guest and Mezzenga of Omni Talk. You're listening to Where We Buy. It's the show where we talk with retail experts and we visit the places where we buy. My name is James Cook. I research retail and real estate for JLL, and I am here to welcome my guest, Ann Mezzenga with Omni Talk. Welcome, Ann.
James, it's so good to see you and so good to be back on the same screen with you. I feel like it's been so long.
I know, right? I often see you on a screen, you see me on a screen, but we're on a screen together. So this is great.
Yes. Yes.
So, Ann, for folks that don't know you, you're a co-founder of Omni Talk. You've got a storied career in retail. If people don't know Omni Talk, just pause whatever you're doing. Go over to omnitalk.blog. Is that it?
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
And
or YouTube
go subscribe.
Or podcasts. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
It is the kind of the leading source of retail information out there. And are you joining us from Minneapolis today?
I'm joining you from Minneapolis today. Yes. The one good time of year. It's really wonderful to be here, and that's summer, James.
Yeah, you're so right. So I'm joining from Indianapolis. So Midwest represent. I'm sure our weather is very similar, although you guys probably have a little colder than we do.
Yes, that depends. It depends. We're a real up and down state, and talking about the weather is something that Minnesotans absolutely adore doing.
So, weather talk complete. Next step.
Yes.
We're going to talk about some expanding retailers, and not all of them, not everyone. There's so many out there that are expanding, but just a few notable, interesting ones that we have some stuff to talk about. My research team is just now finalizing our latest quarterly market report. And so part of that is they look at all of the new stores that have opened in the past quarter. So I was kind of going through that and pulling some different names. Top of the list for me was Five Below. So they're not the biggest opener, but they're still big. They announced 230 stores this year. They signed probably 30 leases just in the past quarter. Interesting times. For folks that aren't familiar, Five Below is, I don't know, how would you describe it? I would call it as like the value store for teens and tweens, maybe?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I was just going to say the same thing, like the dollar store for Gen Z. It's where they're going. All the TikTok like hot items are for sale there, from slime liquors to, whatever the latest. Yeah, slime liquors was like the thing. I was just at the National Confectioners Association. We were talking about like they only sold at Five Below, and Five Below was there talking about how they overnight had to rethink their whole retail strategy and supply chain.
I need to stop you right there. What is a slime liquor?
Well, James, I was not familiar myself until I only know because I have a young tween. But it's like the roll-on deodorant sticks. Remember those? Like from the 80s? Like roll-on deodorant. Yeah. Okay, but imagine you're going to lick the deodorant. So there's like a slime goo inside of this roll-on deodorant type vessel, and you just like lick it and it distributes the product. And that's it. They went viral overnight. Five
All
Below
right.
had the exclusive for a short period of time. And so, yeah, I mean, that's where they're going. And I think that's been a repeat thing that we're seeing from that Gen Z, that Gen Alpha customer. They're going there to get all their goods.
So it's kind of a fad, like you've got to catch on to the new fad or
Yeah.
create the new fad.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've been thinking and talking with people about Five Below is the name Five Below, which at a certain point it really meant everything was $5 or less. A couple of years ago they were like, hey, inflation, we can't really handle that anymore.
Right.
So they've gone above that. Do you think, and I know there's been some talk that, okay, maybe they went prices too high. I mean, have you heard anything like that about prices?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have two schools of thought on this, and we just did an interview with Placer AI with Ethan Chernovsky, who was talking. We were talking about this same thing, where it's like, we're seeing this this drive for value, but it's also about convenience. And I think that one thing that we're seeing Five Below start to do with this expanded price point is also kind of expand some of their assortment. Like they're getting more into electronics, even some apparel items and home items that they weren't before. So I think, the benefit here in their expansion is really allowing them to see like, what if I can get more things on that trip? Am I willing to pay a slightly higher amount for them because I'm saving a trip to Walmart, or I'm saving a trip to, a grocery store, or maybe even a specialty apparel retailer? And so I think that to me is where, yes, you're seeing them creep up above a little bit higher than the Five Below price point, but you're able to accomplish more in one trip. And so I think that's how they're kind of paying that off a little bit as they push further beyond that $5 price point.
And it's interesting not being the target demographic for Five Below. I mean, I've definitely been in multiple Five Belows before, but I'm trying to think of like what, I'd get my slime liquor, I'd get my
yeah, you get your shower loofah, some makeup,
right.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the other things, as I was thinking about Five Below, is one of the things that they've commented on is retail shrink being an issue for them too.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. It's very shopliftable. I can just see teens going in and throwing stuff in their pockets. So they're spending more money on security guards. They did have self-checkout, which they're taking out.
Yeah.
That's a trend.
Yeah, we just put out this week, actually, on our podcast, a report with the H&M Consumer and Retail Group where they were examining, like, what are the real causes of shrink? Like, and we were talking to them about, you hear theft, you hear external theft so frequently brought up, but I think what's even more important for retailers like Five Below, who are selling these lower price point items, to be thinking about is what's happening with the inventory. Like what kind of systems have you put in place to really understand what's happening internally, not so much the external forces. Yes, you can put in security guards to try to deter theft. You get rid of self-checkout machines because, there's the misscans that are happening. But I think where it's really important for retailers, not just Five Below, but especially when you have those lower price point items that are coming in large case packs in a back room somewhere and there's product that tends to disappear. I think that's something that there really hasn't been a reason for a retailer in the deep discount value category to really track those items as closely as they need to now. And there's technology and tools that have upgraded and gotten so much better at this point in time to help do that at a much more affordable price point. Even like RFID is being, like, those stickers are being put on low, dollar items or $2 items, which Five Below is selling because the costs are starting to come down. So I think overall, that's really where, as a retailer, I'd be focused on, let's look at my internal systems. Let's look at my foundational elements here. And where is that shrink really coming from? Is it leaving through the self-checkouts or through people just walking out the door with product, or are there things that really should be happening with my own employees and my own operating systems that could start to prevent some of that?
What I didn't realize is that I'm learning from you now is that RFID is more affordable than
Yeah.
it used to be. Is that just like, as technology advances, the costs come down?
Yeah, I think that's one point. The hardware costs come down. But I think and we'll talk about this probably later when we talk about some of the store visits that we're doing, is we're also seeing more manufacturers start to put those RFID tags on items themselves. And then the use cases for RFID enabling so many more things within the store. So not only are you able to keep track of inventory, but when you have scenarios like shrink, you're able to say, these are the products that left. This is how much the value is of those products. This is the time of day that they left the store. And even starting there at a place with local law enforcement to be able to give those exact details versus, I don't know, somebody swiped a bunch of sweaters off of the front counter. I don't know how much they are. Estimated value is X, and you already have, strapped local law enforcement that's like, all right, well, here they go. Now you're starting in a totally different place because the costs have come down and the value of what RFID can provide, just giving retailers kind of that picture of where products are, the same way that they can see that on a website. Now RFID is enabling so much more data for retailers to work with, which justifies some of the costs too.
A lot of the expansion that we're seeing right now, so we mentioned Five Below, Value. Another one is Harbor Freight Tools. They signed 13 leases in the second quarter. That's another value oriented retailer. And for folks that are familiar, Harbor Freight is it's a lot smaller than Home Depot. It's probably like 15,000 square feet. And they're really focused on value. Like they're always doing sales and doing couponing. And it's kind of this 1-2 punch of one, our deals are good. And two, it's a lot easier to find stuff than going to the huge big box Lowe's and Home Depot, which I run into a lot, where I need a screw. And I'm like looking on an app on my phone to draw me a map to where the screw is in the big box. So I love, and so the trend here of let's return to the smaller, more easy to shop store. I'm really a fan of that. Have you guys been hearing that too in your interviews that you've been conducting? People want smaller?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of depends on where the value is, and what you're doing in that small format. Like you bring to mind like the Bloomie's new concept, where they're kind of like Bloomingdale's has kind of said, we're gonna heavily curate this store so that it still has a point of view. It's going to be a destination for, nicer, more luxury, higher end products that we are going to be able to put in a lot more places. So you don't have to drive an hour to your local mall or to your closest mall with those luxury retailers. Like, let's figure out how we give you some of these items, or even a place to do buy online, pick up in store and try on more easily, and then return if you needed to. Like, all of these things that they're facilitating in those spaces, I think, are a really good example of going small format. Conversely, I would say we're also seeing Macy's do, the same owners, but doing a totally different format where they're going smaller format. And those stores are just like shoving a 40,000 square foot Macy's box into a 15 to 20,000 square foot box, which I think that's a real challenge, I think. I think we are seeing this trend towards smaller format, but I think you have to be so much more strategic about what the purpose is of that store. It can't just be like taking a Home Depot and making it into a 15,000 square foot store, because that doesn't help anybody.
Right. Speaking along this trend, another retailer that's expanding is Burlington. They signed, I think in our stats, they signed another 10 leases in the past quarter. They're growing, and they're shrinking. They're growing in store number, but legacy Burlington coat factories are not, I'm sorry, that shows how old I am. I call them Burlington Coat Factory. Legacy Burlingtons are like 100,000 square feet. So really big. Now all of the new ones, they're closing those. All the new ones are 25,000 square feet. and they're profitable
Yeah.
because they're carrying what sells, not carrying the other stuff, and it's cheaper to lease and rent and operate and less labor. So there's another example, but it's not, let's talk about the other side, going big.
Yeah.
Have you been, I'm sure you've been following, but have you been to the Wayfair store
I have
in
not
Chicago?
yet.
Me neither. It's
No, it's
top of my
on the
list.
list. Yeah, on the list, and we should, for as close as both of us are, we
I
should
know.
be getting there. But no, I think one of the really cool things we talked about this when that store opened. One of the things that I really was excited to see, especially after the years and years and years that Wayfair has been talking about opening this store and the multiple locations that they've tested, was just, again, getting back to what I was talking about with RFIDs. Wayfair has this remarkable, consistent set of data that will tell them how I'm searching for home furnishings and decor on a website. And so I was so excited to see, how they convert that into a store format and when and where they leverage technology, because they are the masters of being able to do that really, really well. And from what I've been able to see so far, they really did a great job of eliminating like what they had talked about. I interviewed Fiona Tan, their CTO, a couple of years ago at Shop Talk, and she was talking about kiosks and screens and things that were going to be using technology in store. But I was thrilled that I did not see that in the actual Wayfair store, that we actually saw more QR codes and electronic shelf labels and things to really help with that shopping experience, to make it truly as seamless as it is to shop Wayfair online. I think they also did a really good job, especially in a large format store, with kind of taking it a step above where IKEA is going. Like, you can do some grab and go shopping as you go, but they also are doing scan and go pickup in there. So instead of scribbling on with a little pencil on a piece of paper like you would at IKEA, you're actually able to scan this and then pick it up at the end of your shopping trip, which, as somebody who's worked on something like that when I was at Target, that's a huge feat to take on, to be able to, within a few hours, guarantee somebody that when they walk out, their product will be ready for them. I mean, I think there's so much that Wayfair seemingly has gotten right in this store, especially with the size and scale that it is. And so I think we're just going to continue to see how they learn from this store in Chicago, and then as they expand into other locations, what pieces they take with them, what's been successful and maybe what's not been so successful.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. You can use this huge flagship store to test different stuff and then roll out the stuff that works and get rid of the stuff that does. I mean, and you mentioned IKEA. That's certainly what popped into my mind as I've been watching videos and reading about it. Just the scope. I always think of IKEA as a people magnet maze that sucks you and your family up for 3 or 4 hours, but they have food, so you can get a meal there. Same thing. Wayfair has a fast casual restaurant, has a seating area, has, what else did I see? Ping pong tables, all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah.
To hang out at.
Oh, James, we got to meet there. It'll be Meow
Right.
Wolf Part 2. We can go
Right.
explore the Wayfair store together.
Right. For folks that aren't aware, Ann and I did a video at Area 15 a couple of years ago and visited the Meow Wolf, which was, I think, the second Meow Wolf location, the big one in Las Vegas, and we had a crazy time. And that video is still on YouTube if you want to check it out.
I will never forget it.
I know. Yeah, that was great. You can tell it's very dated, though, because we're wearing masks. So you can tell when it was filmed. Because it really was. That was the first thing I did when lockdowns opened up a little bit, is go to that, whatever conference we were at.
Yeah, I can't remember even. But yeah, it was good. It was good.
Yeah. Hey, any thoughts? And I know Wayfair's other stores are smaller format, and they're what? They're Joss and Maine, and there's another brand that I can't think
All
of.
modern, yeah.
Are those do you feel like those are part of the Wayfair family, or are they their separate own thing?
I kind of get the impression that those were a test to kind of get to where we are in Chicago now. I mean, it sounds like, again, I haven't been there, but it sounds like they are breaking that out within the space that, and I think that's another question of something that I'm curious to see when I go there for myself, is just how they're taking that merchandising element, because I think people aren't as familiar with all modern as I want a modern couch, or I want a bohemian inspired couch. Like, those are the terms that I think people have become so synonymous with the Wayfair shopping experience. So I'm curious to see, like, if they take that that design style into their merchandising plans, like if they're merchandising by category the way that they would on the website, or if they are really building this like house of brands like they started to do when they launched those individual stores or individual concepts.
Gosh, that's a great point. Organizing by category, instead of brand, that would be great, because you could just be like, hey, I'm into mid mod, and
Right.
that's all like right here.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's the real challenge, like, that IKEA doesn't have. Like, IKEA has one aesthetic and you're going there and you're just going by room basically. But
Right.
Wayfair is just not that, and that's I think what's so exciting about it, and where the huge opportunity is, if Wayfair can get this right, they've really reinvented the shopping experience, the furniture store shopping experience. And as they continue to expand, I think are going to pose a real threat to IKEA, because they can hit that price point, but with so many more types of styles or versions of one sofa, for example.
Other expanders, one that was big on the list was Ulta, with about 60 announced new openings. I think that's for this year.
Okay.
How do you feel about that category? So the beauty category, which was kind of like pandemic, really died, then super resurgence as we went out again. Like, kind of where is that category right now, do you think?
I thought it was really interesting because I can't remember what earnings report call it was on, but the CEO of Ulta was talking about what a threat Sephora and Kohl's has been to them. And so I think it's been interesting to see where they're opening and what their strategy is, especially with, the Ultas inside Target and then the Ulta independent stores, and how they're kind of fluxing with that retail strategy or retail real estate strategy to kind of really take on, right? Sometimes in the same strip malls even that we have here in Minnesota, where there's a Kohl's and Sephora and there's an Ulta in the same spot. So they're really going head to head. I think what I think is impressive about Ulta is that they seem to be investing in their technology stack and their technology strategy to really fulfill the omni-channel shopping experience alongside some of these new store openings. So that's where I think they really have to continue to be strong, so that those exclusive brands that they're getting, they're able to ensure that they're either going to be in store or that they can get it to somebody in store as quickly as possible. I think the Target partnership, it's all about frequency. It's been great for Target because you're giving them, again, like, it's back to how much can I get done in one trip? How are you making things more convenient for me? Same way Five Below is starting to take on other categories in order to do that. Now you have Target with a premium product like an Ulta, that they're able to help drive traffic to stores with. And I think we're seeing the same thing with malls that are starting to bring these concepts in too. Like, that's one of the premium things, I would imagine, right, James? Like, that in an Apple store, an Ulta or a Sephora is
Oh,
the
yeah.
hot ticket, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the big traffic drivers. Yeah, it's just amazing, because I look at some of the malls that we manage, and just the amount of foot traffic that's going to the Ulta, and that's going to the Apple store is the other big one. How would you describe, because I'm not a beauty customer normally, I go with my wife. How would you describe the difference between Ulta and Sephora from, like, just the consumer's perspective?
The Ulta's like footprint generally seems to be larger than Sephora. I think
Mm-hmm.
Sephora is much more they curate the selection based on location in a
Got
much
it.
more definitive way than it seems like the Ulta does. Ulta's kind of the everything store, whereas I think Sephora is really like, we're going to pick our brands. We're going to see, again, another very technologically savvy company, but they're really using the information that they get from their online shopper to determine what's going to be in their physical footprint. And I think even more so than Ulta has to, probably with the size of their boxes. But some of the products are the same. I mean, you can get some of the same products at the Ulta as you can, at the Sephora and Kohl's down the street. But I would say in general, you just have much more selection and a bigger range of products in an Ulta than you are getting in a Sephora. But in terms of brands, I would say maybe a little more luxury push towards Sephora, but that's not always the case anymore.
I gotcha. That's interesting. Okay, so we've got time to talk about one more expander. We've talked about places with hundreds of new locations. Now we're going to talk a place with 2 new locations, and that is Netflix House, which has announced opening in 2025 in King of Prussia outside of Philadelphia, and then the Galleria in Dallas. So 2 mall locations, and this is so I've done what research I can about this, but I don't feel like I have a sense of what it's really going to be like. Maybe you do, but it's shopping, food, and then experiences based on Netflix intellectual property, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking you're going to go to a Bridgerton party,
Yeah.
or a Stranger Things haunted house, or a Squid Game obstacle course, probably something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, is that like your understanding of what it's going to be like?
I think that's exactly it. And I think what I find fascinating about this, one, I think it's a great idea. I think Netflix absolutely has to start to try this. They have so many subscribers. There's so much demand for connecting with other people who also love this show. It's like, I think the best comparison that I could say right now is like, it's like bringing Disneyland in small bits to the rest of the country, and not having to eventually, like fly to Orlando or to LA to have this experience. You get to now like have that little piece of it in your hometown. So I think the potential is huge. The question that I have, James, and I'm curious to get your perspective too, especially after places like Meow Wolf that we've gone, the frequency with which this store will have to change is what's top of mind for me. I mean, you're a retail real estate expert. Like that, how willing do you think that these mall owners who, yes, they're filling a vacant anchor tenant space, how willing are they to like provide tenant improvements or contribute to some of the cost of the build out of these experiences? Because I think that's where I'm most concerned for Netflix for this concept. Like, how much can you do without having to change the physical infrastructure of the box in order to still draw and get people to like go there and be excited about an experience that they're going to have?
I think that in my mind, how these are going to be designed,
Yeah.
is you're going to have like an F&B area, you're going to have a shopping area, and then you're going to have some experiential box or boxes, right?
Sure.
And those boxes are going to be designed in such a way that you can rotate in and out new experiences. And so like you've got all the heartless stuff that doesn't change, the shelving in the store, and I can imagine whatever the Netflix gift shop will be pretty much the same. And I could see I could see how you could design a fast casual dining area or even a casual dining area that had elements in place where you could rebrand it every quarter, every 6 months, something like that. So that's like what I'm imagining in my head. I know that there's a client of ours at JLL owns a shopping mall on the Las Vegas Strip. And Netflix did a Stranger Things pop-up. I don't know if you remember that, but it was very popular. They did it in a number of different cities. And I think they extended their run on the Strip because it was just so popular. And so that's the kind of thing that I'm thinking about is Netflix did a pop-up. They did a food pop-up, which was like a pop-up restaurant based on their different food shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's kind of like they can do that, but now they have a standing venue there to keep
Sure.
rotating it in.
So
Definitely
lower
haunted.
production, not going above and beyond, like more pop-up thing is how you're thinking about it.
Well, it will feel, my sense is like the permanent stuff is going to be a little like white label, right? So you can
Sure,
change it
sure.
out. But then you layer on top of that all the design elements. So you can do like definitely seeing a Stranger Things haunted house in our
Yeah.
future.
Yes.
Like there's no avoiding that. That's definitely going to happen. Anything else is kind of a question mark. But I think that, yeah, I think it will be highly themed. I think that one of the cool things about Netflix is they produce a lot of their own stuff. So they have connections with these production companies. So you'll be
Right.
able to, it's not like you're licensing IP and then doing your own thing with it. You can
Right.
involve the producer of the show in your development of whatever the experience might be.
Right. And use that one person to scale that to 5 different experiences around the country
Yeah.
too, I imagine. Like that's the other key component of this is like the pop-ups are one thing, but now you're trying to make this a business that's operational in 5 different size spaces and, how do you conceive of that and make it so that it's something that's truly scalable?
Yeah, and so we were talking about Meow Wolf, which is very expensive to build, highly detailed, highly
Yes.
experiential, super immersive, like you're in an alien landscape. But I've talked to people who have gone once, maybe twice, and they're like, "Okay, I get it,"
Yeah.
and they're not going to go again. And that's not true.
Right.
Like my brother-in-law is a Meow Wolf freak, and he keeps going back. He lives in Denver, and he's like, "Yeah, I just keep going back and discovering new things." So but there is an element of a person who wants something new,
Yeah.
and for them, I think the Netflix house will deliver. But I think
Yeah.
for it to make a splash, they're going to have more than 2 locations. I think they're
Right.
going to need one in every major metro.
Yep. Yep. I would agree.
Yeah.
Like Dave and Buster's, like that they're
Yeah.
going
Right.
up. Like you got, I mean, essentially, like you look at the volume that the Dave and Buster's type concepts are doing. I loved your recent podcast about the family entertainment centers. It's like there's just so much more. You got to focus on good food, and you got to focus on like what's drawing people to the space. So it's about that constantly evolving concept, but it's also about the other things like you're talking about, James, that have to accompany it. So it is an experience that's like, yeah, I'll go get a beer there or, I'll go grab food there and see what's going on.
Yeah. Now I'm not a parent, but I do have nephews, and when we do take them to places, like top of my list is there something I can eat there that I'm gonna enjoy?
Totally.
you know,
Totally.
do they have good beer? Is another important one too.
That's right.
And
Yes.
thankfully, in modern times, the answer is usually yes. I
Yes.
feel bad for my parents. The places,
Yeah.
the things they had to endure. Well,
Yes.
okay. Let's jump into part 2, which is kind of our new or notable store visits. Maybe I'll do one or two. You can do one
Yeah.
or two. We'll see how it goes. I'll let you
Awesome.
kick it off.
So I would say the store that I most recently went to and we just shot a quick video is the H&M flagship store that they just opened in Soho. So most people listening are probably familiar with H&M, but major fast fashion retailer, tons of product on the floor. Like I think overwhelming amount of product on the floor in most scenarios. And I think that was what I first took away when I walked through the doors of this store. It's a very small footprint. I would say maybe like 8 to 10,000 square feet roughly. And what they've done is they've turned it into a more boutique feel. So you've got giant digital screens that line the walls. You definitely have more displays set up with outfits or concepts. You really do feel like you're going into a boutique in Soho versus a giant H&M store where you're just going to be like rifling through product. But one of the key things that really allows them to do that is because they have RFID that they've invested heavily in for the store. So again, they know when I'm walking around what things I'm picking up off the floor, what things I'm putting back. They also have these smart fitting rooms now that they have RFID enabled. So as soon as I enter in the fitting room with my products, they all appear on the mirror. I can request one be ordered to my room if the wrong size is what I pulled, and they do that in just a couple of minutes. But H&M also has that information to say like, okay, why did Anne bring 3 pairs of pants in and not walk out with any of them? Like, what do we need to know about our store that really helps us understand, like, okay, the product's not working, or this color is selling out, or, we're seeing volume from this store in this region of the country for gray tank tops, but online we're seeing these are trending, and then they can kind of use that as a continuous feedback loop with, what they're putting on displays, what they're seeing trend on social, and just be able to kind of react and respond and have the store be more of a living, breathing thing than just, one product set goes out this week, and then in 3 weeks we have a whole new set of products and the rest of it goes on clearance. So that store was just so beautifully done. And I think really has changed the overall shopping trip to an H&M. And whether or not they're able to roll this out to more locations, we'll have to wait and see, because it is pretty new for them still. But really, I think, improves that mall shopping experience for so many of us, if they can pull this off.
About a year ago, we went to there was an H&M pop-up in Brooklyn.
Ooh.
and it felt like they were experimenting with some of this technology. And the thing I remember most is they had I guess we would call it magic mirror in the dressing room, and you would bring items in and it would know the items that you had. And the staff there was so friendly that we got to talking a lot with them. They were like, hey, we're researchers. And they just really opened up. And one of the things they said was, when people shoplift, they will rip off the RFID tags and stuff them behind the magic mirror. and so then somebody else will come in, and the magic mirror will think that they have all these other items in with them that they don't have.
Right,
you know?
right.
Which is just the kind of thing that you learn by testing. This is why they do it, to find out when that stuff happens.
Yeah.
Did you
absolutely.
And did you use it yourself? Like, did you try it out? How did it work well?
It was great. Yeah. I think, again, there still is newness in this approach for the staff there to try to, to figure out which fitting room it's going into and all these things. But eventually, I know they're working on being able to pay from the fitting room, so you can check out right from the fitting room. And I think that's still an area that I think, I loved the whole experience until I had to check out, and then it was still waiting in line, and you're like, there's multiple reasons, a whole podcast, James, about why I can't believe that we're still waiting in lines to pay for our specialty apparel purchases. But yeah, I mean, all in all, it was a truly, truly great experience. And they have a whole buy online, pick up in store section too, with some lockers as well, that they're trying to alleviate that issue with people. If they do just want to come in and pick up something that they ordered online, they can do that too. So I think all a work in progress, but just positive overall. That's
awesome. Who is it that uses RFID for cashless checkout? Isn't there like a Uniqlo?
Yep.
That does that?
Yep. Uniqlo's doing that. Like in their Hudson Yards store, they have the bins where you just drop all your products in there, and then you just check out right away. Lululemon's using this, but they still have RFID. They still have store staff that's facilitating the checkout. But it's such a remarkable technology. It's been around for a long time. But again, like we were talking about at the beginning, now it's really starting to see more than one use case, and making it much more applicable for retailers to be using.
Cool. Okay. I'm going to, 1 second.
Yeah.
My site visit is a little show and tell here. So this is a cookbook for Dishoom.
Oh my God, I love that place.
Which have you been to Dishoom?
Oh my God, it's one of my favorite. Every time in London, I have to stop.
So I just came back from London for vacation, and like 3 people are like, you have to go to Dishoom. So that was my most recent site visit that I'm super excited about. For folks that aren't familiar, it's a small Indian restaurant chain in the UK, 10 locations. They are modeled after small cafes, kind of circa 1960s. So they have this kind of retro Bombay feel. The one we ate at was in Covent Gardens, which is actually, I found out, their first one that opened in 2010. So like the food off the charts amazing. And I don't know, like they say, like I've heard people call it like Bombay comfort food or something like
Yeah.
that. I mean, how would you describe the food?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to describe it. It's just it's one of those restaurants that really transforms you. Like you really do feel like you're stepping into that era in that region of the world, and the dishes just complement it so well. Like the experience, the sharing, like everything. It's hard to find those transformative dining experiences, especially, I feel like. So that's one of the reasons why I think it's so beloved by everyone in the UK.
Yeah, and so as I'm reading the cookbook, and as an aside, I made the one of the biryani dishes I made on Sunday out of the cookbook. It took me most of Sunday to make it. It was awesome, but it's kind of like I was thinking it's like, you know, Penn and Teller, how they show you how they do the magic trick and
Yes.
then they do it and it still blows you away.
Yeah.
Like I know how they made this dish and I think I recreated it fairly well, but the amount of effort is like, I'm going to do this maybe like once a year. It's just
Yeah.
insane what they put into one dish.
Right, right. Yeah, but it's what, you know, it's one of those things that you can't get very many places anymore, and it's so worthwhile,
Yeah.
but also probably going to drive you back to London very soon so that you don't have to make that, James.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. Yeah. I'm going to, I'll certainly go there the next time I visit. So, interesting thing that I also learned from the cookbook, which is the main reason why I brought this up,
Yeah.
is about how they design their restaurants. So each dishoom is unique. So they have 10 locations. Each one is unique. And as I was reading about how they design it, it made me think of how Disney does their design.
Oh,
For
cool.
each restaurant, they write a fictional backstory and setting. So they have a
Right.
fictional like founder with a story that has their own tastes and a certain time and place. They write a 50-page backstory for each individual location. So, for example, the Carnaby location is a cafe during Bombay's rock scene in the late 60s. And so they'll spend months researching the people, the historical events, the design, they interview people. And so then they have this whole book they've written about that one location. So then when they go to design it, every design decision is driven by the story, which is what made me think of Disney so much. So, and so, for example, in the lobby of their Carnaby Street location, they changed all of the screws that they'd used to flathead screws to be historically accurate to the 1960s. So they changed it all out, which is like way above and beyond, but it's a great example of like really going whole hog into design. So I can't think of, I mean, I know a lot of retailers use personas and come up with stories, but I can't think of a ton that will go to the level of coming up with a special story for each individual location like that.
Well, one, how do we get those jobs, James? Because
right?
that sounds like an amazing thing to be able to just go and do research. I mean, you're perfectly suited for that. But it's interesting, like just when you think about, something else that we're hearing a lot about in the retail space is just like the changing roles that are available right now. Like, how do you evolve, especially as so many more retailers and brands are going towards experiential and really content-driven businesses, because that's how they're getting and attracting new consumers. I love that example because I think it shows just how much things are changing to really pull that off in a very authentic way. And yeah, I mean, let's put our resumes in. How do we do that?
I would love to write a 50-page story about your restaurant. Just anyone. I'll conduct interviews. I'll do research all day long. That is like 100% up my alley.
Yes. Doesn't matter what the food is, but just put James on it.
Right, exactly. And I just love it too because, I mean, it gives you a reason to go to these different locations to see, oh, here's the one that's, got this story behind it. And they do have all the stories. I was just looking at them today. They have the different stories on their website. So
Oh,
you can
cool.
see, oh, hey, this one's about this guy. And they've gone, I think the most recent one, they even have like a comic book of the backstory of one location. So these people are serious about narrative and storytelling. And I mean, you know this better, just as well as anybody, that if you can't attract people with low prices, you got to have something compelling to bring them in. And that is, the stories are the way to go. It's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, James. I mean, I think that's so cool too. Like we were just in Paris, and I had never been to La Samaritan or Le Bon Marché. Like I've never been to any of those places before, but it really did kind of endear me again towards the department store concept. And it's like, this is what it used to be like. I mean, we just don't have that anymore. And I think you bring up a really good point of like, there's going to have to be this investment. If you're not just going to be bargain basement prices, like what's giving me the reason to be, the reason to come to visit you and to stay in your venue? Yeah, it's a great thing I think to think about as we're heading into the coming years here of price wars and experience wars.
I want to be part of the experience wars, the great experience wars. I'm not interested in the great price
Likewise,
wars, but the experience wars are fun.
yeah.
Okay, well, we are quickly running out of time, but let's do one more site visit. And so what's another place that you've gone to recently?
So I think the other thing that I've seen most recently, we headed down to Schnucks, the grocery store. It's a regional grocer down in St. Louis. And I think that when we're talking about food experiences of the future, and especially essentials shopping for groceries, what that future store might look like, I think the Schnucks store is such a great example of truly utilizing technology to aid in operations so that your store staff, which are becoming more and more in high demand, can truly focus on the things that differentiate you as a retailer. So Schnucks has Tally, the robot from Simbi Robotics, which is number one. You see that thing walk in, and it's just like, this robot roaming the shelves.
Pretty tall, right?
It's about 6 feet tall. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the whole, a row of cameras, and it's roaming the stores at all hours of the day. And it's really interesting. At first, you would think that an associate, we hear like the robots are taking over and the robots are taking our jobs. Like there's a spear of it, but it's really become a part of the team at Schnucks, and they are utilizing that robot to make sure that product is in stock, that prices are accurate, and it's really kind of started the smart store concept for Schnucks, and now they just continue to build other technologies on top of it. But their head of stores said directly, she's like, if I tried to take that robot out of here, I'd be attacked by the Schnucks employees because they love it so much. It's become so much a part of their culture. And like, it's also pretty cool. Like they put googly eyes on it, and they've got like a personality and like all kinds of things that they're like, they dress it up for holidays and things like that. So it's really become like this really fun part of being in the store. And behind the scenes, what they can't see, like it's making sure that when you go to fill up your basket and do your weekly shopping trip, like that all the things are there, their prices are the correct prices, and that if I need help trying to figure out like where are the breadcrumbs, that I can find an associate. They're not working on, they're not running back and forth stocking shelves or doing those kinds of things that typically they would be preoccupied or have to kind of focus on before helping customers. So that's one that I would say if you're in the grocery industry or you're curious about where the future of grocery retail is headed, you gotta stop in St. Louis and see one of those.
And so I'd known about the Schnucks robot, but I didn't know the manufacturer. You mentioned the name. Is that the only place that they're at right now?
No, actually Simbi's in BJ's. They are in I want to say it's Woodman's. I have to double check and see, but they are in quite a few retailers already. So it's not just Schnucks that you can see them in, but Schnucks was one of the first retailers with multiple locations to kind of roll them out chain wide, which they just did within the last couple of years here. So those teams are seeing great success with those robots and what they've been able to power for the team.
That's awesome. So, Anne, we are out of time. Thank you so much for joining me today. If folks want to learn more, probably just recommend they head on over to omnitalk.blog. That'd be the best spot to find everything about about you and Chris and what you're up to. I feel like every time I go on LinkedIn, you're at a new conference somewhere in the world.
We get around, James. We had a very busy first couple of quarters this year. Couple more places that we're heading to the rest of this the second half of the year, but we're on LinkedIn all the time, so I love to connect with people. So thankful to be able to have this opportunity to connect with you again, James, and really love what you and the team are doing. It's so fun to follow.
We're going to have to put our schedules together and see if there's a time that we'll be in the same city at around the same time. I'd love to meet up in person.
Again, yes, we've got to do another visit. It's still, it's like one of my favorite of all time places was the Area 15 visit. So maybe we'll hit a Netflix house or something else.
Yes, that's it. King of Prussia or what's the other one? Dallas. So
yes.
Yeah, one or the other. All right. Well, for folks that are listening out there, if you like this podcast, do me a favor, go into the app that you're listening to right now and give us a rating. Or even better, write a little review. Give us just a sentence about something that you liked about the show. And of course, if you are not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to Where We Buy. We're on the iPhone podcast app. We're in Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Or you can find us on the web at wherewebuy.show. And if you have a specific question about retail, shopping centers, or retail real estate, feel free to connect with me and send me a message on LinkedIn. And that's a wrap.